And I want to start off by talking about this conversation that Emmett Savoris and I kind of touched on a bit at the end of the show last week. And I wanted to pick up where we left off yesterday in light of what happened this past week. As I mentioned in the opener, Dak Prescott and Jalen Hurts will go head-to-head for the first time this season in Philly, I believe, in what is America's game of the week. There's a lot of conversations, of course, because it's not just a divisional game, but it's the Dallas Cowboys and the Philadelphia Eagles. But what's most important to me is that it's Dak Prescott and Jalen Hurts. Justin, I don't even know like the question I want to ask. I really just want to get into a Dak Prescott, Jalen Hurts conversation because I feel like Jalen Hurts hasn't been playing up to standards based on where he left off of last season, and he hasn't been getting criticized fairly because of it.
That's because of the team's record. I think Shannon Sharp kind of touched on that like either 2 or 3 weeks ago on First Take. He said, we are not criticizing Jalen Hurts about what's going on in wins the same way with losses, and that's the only reason why. And he was kind of correct. I think he has 8 interceptions already on his season, as opposed to just 13 touchdowns. You're seeing the turnovers are coming, the completion percentage not as high as you would like it. But the thing is, I don't want to preach clairvoyance here as I usually do, but it kind of should have seen that coming in that there are 2 things. One, predominantly Shane Steichen is not there. That's obviously his last season's offensive coordinator who put him in a lot of run-first situations. And, Philadelphia, how potent their running attack was. And, Shane Steichen using him as a dual threat. Now, with the absence of Shane Steichen, one, leading to the second point is that you are no longer seeing the, I don't want to say dual threat because he's always a dual threat, but you're not seeing the run-heavy formations as much as out of Philadelphia. So it was only the next progression that had to come, which is you wanted to see him progress as a pocket passer. And it was necessary simply because Rex Ryan always says, or it's not Rex Ryan, actually. Former Bucs head coach Bruce Arians always said the more you put your quarterback in harm's way, the more he's likely to get harmed. So, you knew that the runs were going to be dealt back. And I think because of this outside of Shane Steichen system, now also then opposing teams don't fear him as a runner he once was. Now you are seeing coming back to earth. I do believe you will see him get back to what he was or closer to what he was next season as he gets more familiar in this offense and as he stops trying to force feed A.J. Brown the football. I think you're going to see him get back to 2022 Pro Bowl levels or all pro levels, wherever you want to see. I don't know if you asked me to touch on Dak Prescott yet, but Jalen Hurts' return to earth was not kind of shocking to me. What is shocking is the amount of turnovers. I just thought the completion percentage would not be as high, but the turnovers are a bit worrying.
So I want to make my position crystal clear on this at the beginning, because much of this will likely get clipped and posted on socials, and I've been doing this long enough to understand how that can go. So I want to make my position on this crystal clear. If I am picking one of these guys at their best for one game, I'm picking Jalen Hurts. If I'm picking one of these guys at their best for an entire season, I'm picking Jalen Hurts. I want to make that crystal clear. This is not my position in this conversation is not that Dak Prescott is better than Jalen Hurts. I don't think that. I would be a fool for thinking that because he's not. But by saying Dak Prescott's better than Jalen Hurts, you'd be essentially saying that Dak Prescott's a top 5 quarterback in football. And he's not a top 5 quarterback in football. So I'm not making that argument. What I am saying, though, is in 8 games this season, so far through 8 games this season, Jalen Hurts has thrown at least 1 interception in 5 of those games. He's thrown at least 2 interceptions twice. And in the 2 games, he threw at least 2 interceptions. It was against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Miami Dolphins. Or I'm sorry, not the Dolphins. The New York Jets. In the game against the Jets, he was the reason why they lost. And if you throw 2 interceptions against a team that has a better quarterback than Baker Mayfield, they lose that game too. And my position on elite quarterbacks all season has been very consistent. If you are an elite quarterback, you have to play like an elite quarterback every single week, right? If I was an actor, it doesn't matter how grand of an actor I was. If I want a job as an actor, I have to prove every week on auditions, with self-tapes, whatever, that I'm a good actor fit for this role. So far this season, through 8 weeks, Jalen Hurts hasn't given me a game so far this season that makes you think, oh, wow, he's a guy that fits in the upper echelon of quarterbacks, up there with the Pat Mahomes and the Josh Allens and the Joe Burrows of the world.
I want to pause on Josh Allen, though, calling an elite quarterback. Well, that's another conversation for another day. But I want to pause on Josh Allen being an elite quarterback.
I don't think Josh Allen's been elite this year either. But what I'm saying is, overall, like this is the consensus. The consensus of America and the world probably is that the 4 best quarterbacks in football play for Kansas City, Cincinnati, Buffalo, and Philly. Here's the problem: of the 4 quarterbacks, none of them have really looked like top 4 quarterbacks this year consistently. Joe Burrow's been hurt. Josh Allen has his own 3 interception game against the Jets, and Pat Mahomes, he threw 3 picks against the Broncos this season or this week. But Jalen Hurts has been given too much benefit of the doubt, in my opinion. I think that there's a lot of weight that's being given to him being the runner-up to Pat Mahomes in the MVP race last year, and him outplaying Pat Mahomes in the Super Bowl despite losing. Like, that's all great. But as we know, the NFL is what have you done for me lately? And lately, with an exception of his 4 touchdown game to no interception game against the lowly Washington Commanders, Jalen Hurts is 9-8 this year, touchdowns, interceptions. And if you take out the other 2 games where he didn't throw any picks, he is 2, 3, 4, 5. He is like 6-7 or 6-8 in those games. Like, it's not good. Jalen Hurts has not been an elite quarterback this season. He hasn't been a top 2 quarterback this season. He hasn't looked like the guy who finished runner-up in MVP last year. And he hasn't looked like the guy who outplayed Pat Mahomes this year. And my position is such that if Dak Prescott came off of the season that Jalen Hurts came off of and is playing and played this year the way that Jalen Hurts has been playing, he would be the headline of every sports talk show on TV, YouTube, and otherwise every single week throughout the course of the day. Like, they would only want to talk about Dak on whether it's Get Up, whether it's First Take, Undisputed. Like,
there are 2 reasons for that. One, the team he plays for, like the Dallas Cowboys, like whether you like them or hate them, they are the most polarizing sports team in all of America. So that's one reason. And the second and most important reason I think Jalen Hurts doesn't get the flat that Dak Prescott usually gets this season, because the reality is Philadelphia only has 1 loss. So whether it's fair or not, the Philadelphia Eagles are not losing because of Jalen Hurts. Your point remains, Jalen Hurts is not playing elite football. Like, that is obvious and clear.
They've lost. The one game they've lost is because of Jalen Hurts. So.
Right. So, but
they should be undefeated.
But they have the 1 loss. So I guess we know the saying, winning cures everything. And what will come up though, Marcus, is the slate that Philadelphia has. And I wanted to bring that up. I can't see if I have that here. We will find out, because they have Dallas twice. They have the Chiefs, they have the EA, the Bills, they have the 49ers. Yeah, we will see. Like, that is when I will start judging. Like, when you go through that murderer's row, and that murderer's row is all in a row. So, like, you have the Cowboys twice, the Chiefs, the Bills, the 49ers. And the Seahawks. Good gosh. Like, after those, that's 6 games? Then I will be prepared to make a judgment on Jalen Hurts.
Well, here's the thing. You mentioned that Jalen Hurts isn't getting this heat, this criticism, because they're 7-1. As much as I want to agree with it, I can't. And the reason why is because, again, if we're talking Dak Prescott, if Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys were 7-1, and Dak Prescott was playing the way that Jalen Hurts was playing, it wouldn't matter that they're 7-1. All that would matter is that Dak Prescott's 13-8 and has cost them a football game. And so what I'm saying is, when we look at Dak Prescott
Dallas
as
number 1, the Cowboys is number 1 reason why.
When we look at Dak Prescott as a quarterback, like, and again, I know this is very difficult for a lot of people. It was difficult for me at one point in time. I just had to step back a second and really take a look at things and how they're working. And as You can tell there was a shift on the way I talk about Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys on the show for the last year and a half, because I had to take a step back and I had to think about it. And when you think about it, let's recognize something for a second. If Dak Prescott played for any other franchise in the NFL that wasn't in Dallas, we would give Dak Prescott the respect that he deserves as a for sure top 12, maybe top 10 quarterback in football. And we would treat Dak Prescott with the respect that he deserves. The problem is, and I said this last week, and I'll say it again, there are so many people who have nothing else to say about the Cowboys other than the fact that they haven't won a Super Bowl or been to a conference championship game in 27 years or 28 years now almost. And that's all they want to talk about. But there's so many other teams who in that same stretch of time have not sniffed a Super Bowl or a conference championship game. Like the Browns haven't. The Commanders haven't. Like there's so many teams. The Texans haven't. Now, granted, they've only been around for like 21 years, but still, like there's so many teams who you could throw in that boat. The Lions haven't won a playoff game in a little over 1,000 days, let alone been to a conference championship or Super Bowl. Like there are also a lot of teams who have never even stepped foot on a Super Bowl field or even won a Super Bowl championship. We have become so obsessed over the last, what has it been now? Are we talking about, 9 years of Dak Prescott's career? We've been so obsessed with putting him in a position to make him have to atone for the sins of the Dallas Cowboys, specifically Jerry Jones, of the last 27 years, that we don't want to give Dak Prescott his love. Dak Prescott showed up against the Rams, dropped 4 touchdowns and 1 pick, and no one really said much of anything about it. But I sat up here and I got on Twitter and I got on TikTok and I watched TV shows and I listened to other podcasts, and we're praising Jalen Hurts for going 4 touchdowns, no picks against the Commanders. Are the Rams and the Commanders that much different? No. They're both mediocre football teams. And if the argument is, oh, well, that's a division game, what I would push back on you and say is Jalen Hurts has owned the Commanders for the last 2 years.
Sure.
Jalen Hurts hasn't lost the Commanders so far in his career, as far as memory serves. He's lost a handful of, well, they did lose last year to the Commanders, actually. I'll tell you that. That's 1 loss. Like, Jalen Hurts owns the Commanders. And if you're going to sit here and tell me that Jalen Hurts deserves to be praised for going 4 touchdowns, no picks against the Commanders, as mediocre and as robust and as terrible as they are, then I think we deserve to give Dak Prescott some praise for throwing 4 touchdowns and 1 interception against the Rams, who are just as mediocre, robust, and dysfunctional as the Commanders, if not slightly more, because they're also injury prone. And if you want to sit here and tell me, oh, well, the defense did this, the defense did that, let's do some simple math for you. If Deron Bland doesn't get the pick 6 and the block and the punt isn't blocked out the back of the end zone, the score is still 28-23, and the Cowboys still win that football game thanks to Dak Prescott. So there has to be a point in time when we give Dak Prescott the respect that he deserves. There has to be.
I try to stay even keel, as you know me, so I'm not very high or very low. And so with that, I try not to go to the extremes. Like, I give him the respect of a top 12 quarterback at the very least. But I also know how Dallas is put together roster-wise. The term front runner kind of applies to them more so than any team. In other words, we've seen when that team doesn't force turnovers, what that offense looks like. When you're forced to, or when you tell Dak, hey, you as Dan Orlovsky would say, when you need him to rise above the X's and O's and carry this team, then there are question marks about Dak's mechanics, Dak not trusting his eyes, Dak, lofting throws and not letting it rip. And we can agree that Dallas's defense is elite. We can agree there. Like, this is a not just elite team. It is fast and it loves to create turnovers. Part of that is what happens when you are facing elite offenses and you're asking Dak to go toe-to-toe. Therein lies my problem. So as I said, the same way I'm not going to cast judgment on Jalen Hurts until the murderous row starts from this week is the same way I'm going to give a look at Dak, because again, when this defense, and you talked about it, that team scored points on special teams, that team scored points on defense. When you're not doing that, because you have to know that you're not going to do that every single week, and even though Dallas does thrive on scoring on defense and giving the offense short fields, I want to see what you look like against the Philadelphia of the division, or the San Francisco's. Like we saw what happened against San Francisco. It was not pretty. So I try to keep it even keel. I give Dak his respect as a top 10 quarterback in his league. I just know of the flaws when your defense is not giving you short fields. I know what you look like.
So let me ask you this question about San Francisco then, because obviously Dak Prescott did not play good in that game. 1 touchdown to 3 interceptions. They lost. But we've also spent much of the season putting San Francisco's defense among the best, if not the very best defenses in football. So, and maybe you haven't, but that's what people
not this season. Last season, sure, but not this season.
Sure. So here's my point. If in 4 or 5 weeks time, when we get our NFC Championship rematch between the 49ers and the Eagles, an improved 49ers team now because they just went out there and they just got Chase Young at a deadline yesterday. If Jalen Hurts also goes 1-3 and they get absolutely mollywopped by the San Francisco 49ers, are we going to keep the same energy about Jalen Hurts that we had about Dak Prescott a couple weeks ago? That's my only question. And the reason why is because, again, we have to look at this objectively. If you want to sit here and you want to tell me that the reason why you have concerns about Dak Prescott is because sometimes when the lights are bright, he's not, I can't push back on you on that, because there have been moments where when the lights have been bright, he's not. But do you know why we pick up on those things so much? Is because, and I'll say it because no one else wants to say it, I'll just call a spade here. Dak Prescott is not a quarterback that is going to be the reason why you win a Super Bowl. He's not. He's not going to be the reason why you go on this magical run and hoist the Lombardi at the end of the season. You know how I know he's not that? Because Jerry Jones made it crystal clear from the moment he was drafted that that's not the case. Because they almost didn't want to start him after Tony Romo's bat gave out in 2016. They made it perfectly clear when Zeke was healthy that Zeke is the face of this team, despite the fact that Zeke was continuously declining and despite the fact that the O-line was only getting older and unhealthier. And they couldn't stay together. Despite all of that, despite Zeke's inconsistency, despite the O-line's inconsistency, Dak Prescott still stepped up. So what you're telling me is the Cowboys have presented this formula to me. When everything around Dak is great, when the defense is clicking and when the run game is clicking, all Dak has to do is manage the game. When I look at Dak Prescott and say that Dak Prescott's a great game manager, I would. Because this is the same guy who in his rookie season, it's since been broken thanks to C.J. Stroud this season, but he set the record for the most pass attempts without an interception. He also went a very long time before even making a play where you think, wow, that's a turnover worthy play. So obviously, from the moment Dak has been in Dallas, it has been made abundantly clear that this isn't his team. And despite it not being his team, he has still had to show up to work and be this guy. And everyone walks around and is like, Dak, it's supposed to be your team, bro. But Jerry made it clear that before it was Dak's team, it was Zeke's team. And before and after it was Zeke's team, for a split second, people walked around and said it was Amari Cooper's team. And now that Amari Cooper's gone, Dak had 1 year where he could prove, it's my team now. And what happened? Unfortunately, his ankle popped. And when he got back and he was healthy, now everyone wants to say it's Micah Parsons' team. And that's fine. If this isn't Dak's team, then we need to stop treating him and judging him as if it is. Like, you can't have it both ways. No one looks at San Fran and says this is Brock Purdy's team, because it's not. No one looks at like the Rams and says that that's Matt Stafford's team, because it's not. No one looks at these other teams who clearly their best player isn't the quarterback and says, oh, it's this guy. When have we ever said that the Tennessee Titans belong to Ryan Tannehill? We've never said that. We've never said that. It's Derrick Henry's team. And so Dak Prescott deserves to be judged based on where he is. It's not his team. And if he shows up and plays great, he deserves the praise for it. If he doesn't play that great, but the defense is still successful and still elite, Dak's not supposed to be that guy, because the defense is, we can't pick and choose when we want to critique Dak and when we don't want to critique Dak. When I've got another guy in the same division who has been struggling this season, and we've said next to nothing about it. And I don't care that it's because they're 7-1, because to be completely honest, they could very easily not be 7-1, because both games against the Commanders, they should have lost if it weren't for the Commanders' incompetency. They should really be 5-3. They should be half a game ahead of it. Like that's what I'm saying. We have to be realistic and be very level and very even keel. with our expectations. And when it comes to Dak Prescott, and the Dallas Cowboys in general, we're always trying to find ways to move the goal line. That shouldn't be the case.